Perfect. So now you're recorded. And then as soon as I leave, y'all can start the show. Reminder, you only have 40 minutes, which is going to be a little less now. So just keep time in mind. And then after you're done, the recording will go on your computer, Frank. It'll tell you after the meeting's over. And so once that's done, it'll just save to your
My
computer,
background being
and then
muted.
you'll just send it on to me.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right, let's get it going because I've got the timer on us right now. We're at 12 seconds. So we'll probably have about 35 minutes, Wes. So
All right.
we'll time it up.
Awesome. All right. Good luck, guys.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Hold on, Frank. Trying to get this. There we go. That's a little better.
All right, welcome ND Nation. You're under the Golden Dome with Wes Pritchett and Frank Stams, two members of the last championship team at the University of Notre Dame, 1988. And we're here. This is the inaugural, our podcast for the 2024 season of the University of Notre Dame. And Wes, I'd like to talk about in this podcast three things, really, to set it up. And then we'll get into, personnel next week. Hopefully we can get Timmy Brown as our guest, and kind of preview not only, the wide receivers that, Notre Dame gained in the transfer portal, but also set up that A&M game, which is now, a couple of weeks away. And who better to talk about A&M than Timmy Brown? But, let's first talk about really the engine that makes it all go, the leadership. I'm talking about Marcus Freeman. He's going into his third year now. And as you know, to me, and maybe to you, the third year is when you want to see it. In Holtz's third year, we win the national championship, go undefeated, with a schedule that was absolutely freaking ridiculous that year. That's that year. And you don't realize it at the moment, but that year we beat the number 2, number 4, number 5, and number 7 team as they finished the rankings that season. So that strength of schedule was just ridiculous. So talk about Freeman, talk about strength of schedule, and then we'll talk about Riley Leonard, the transfer quarterback from Duke. So your thoughts on Marcus Freeman, and then I'll give you my thoughts as well.
Thanks, Frank. I can't say that I know Marcus really well. I've clearly heard him speak a few times. He was, I think, and I've met him a few times, and I've seen him interact with recruits. And I think the thing that I take from being around the guy is just that he has a very calm demeanor. He has a lot of confidence. He's played. He's been there. Seems to be a little bit of a player's coach. I think he had some growing pains the first couple of years, but I mean, that's a big spot to be in, to be the head coach at Notre Dame at such a young age. I think the thing that I like, there's a couple of things I liked really a lot about Marcus. The first thing he did when he got there was realize that the tradition of Notre Dame is one of the most important things at the school. And the first thing he did was try to get the alumni football players involved with the current program. He did that with the calls where it was like the State of the Union sort of Notre Dame football. He got the players involved. He invited all of us back for his first spring game. And I'll never forget he brought all the players in. We had a cocktail hour. And he said, okay, we're going to break all the players down by what they want to do, by their majors and what industry they want to be in when they graduate from Notre Dame. And they broke us up into all these little think tank groups. He was like, this is your NIL. These are the guys you need to know. This is your example. These are the guys that are going to help you, teach you how to be successful in life. And I thought that was incredible. Now, as far as coaching, you're right. It's his third year. I think they have a very easy schedule this year, or the easier schedule than they've had in years gone by. They're going to have a senior quarterback. They're going to have to stay healthy. They've done very well recruiting. So there's really not a lot of excuses for him not to do well this year. I mean, I think anything worse than a 10-2 season would be very disappointing.
All right, all great thoughts. And now I'm going to play bad cop. And as we go through the season under the Golden Dome, I want our listeners to appreciate the perspective that we're going to give them, and the standard that which we're used to. My biggest, and I'm going to draw the big picture first of all, is what I'm amazed at is football at all levels. It seems to be everything we get is the cream, the cream, the cream, the niceties. How beautiful everything is, how people get along, what great, idealist. What everybody's do is the greatest thing since sliced bread. That was the farthest thing from reality, right? I know, I see you're chuckling, right? The farthest thing from reality that we had at Notre Dame. Now I appreciate, and let me play the bad cop, because that makes for a good podcast. The yin and the yang, the conflict is, when Holtz got there, he was conscious of Notre Dame. That was his job. That's what he wanted all along. He talks about it now all the time, growing up there in East Liverpool, and Fallensby, West Virginia, strong. I forget the name of the little Catholic school that he went to, but Notre Dame was in his soul. But when he got there, it was all about Lou Holtz, and it was all about Lou Holtz's culture. And I don't say that in a bad way. I say that's how it had to be. He was the leader of the ship, and you either got on board or the train was leaving you behind. And I was a perfect example. I experienced both. So, when I hear you talk about Marcus Freeman, it's nice that he's engaging and doing things off the season, but I need to see a little bit more kind of a little nastiness from
Yeah.
him. You talk about, I've met him a couple of times. He seems kind of, and I'll be honest with you, seems a little aloof when I meet him. Now he's probably just being cautious because he doesn't know me, and I appreciate that. But I'd like to see him a little bit more engaging. Um, so, and then, the jury's still out on him. I mean, after last year's season, what happened in Ohio State. He's got the pedigree, went to Ohio State, played on four teams there that were, two of them played in the national championship game, played linebacker. I think he's got the toughness, he's got the know-how. He's served under, from Ohio State. He becomes a grad assistant there. Then I think his first job is at Kent State with the linebackers. Then he goes to Purdue with the linebackers, then becomes co-defensive coordinator. And then from Purdue, he goes to Cincinnati. I think where now he's coaching with Brian Kelly, and they have big success there. But and then he comes to Notre Dame with Brian Kelly. But you know this, being the head coach is far different than being what the head coach is wanting you to coach and how you want to be. Now you're the guy everybody looks to. And I think there's a tremendous amount of growing pains that he's experienced in the last couple of years at Notre Dame, and specifically some decision making during the game. And I don't know if how fast you get that or if you ever get that. Just want to know your thoughts on that.
Well, you make some really good points. I mean, we both came in the same year with Jerry Faust, and we had a lot of talent on our teams. And Jerry did not know how to coach at that level. He didn't have a program and a platform to sort of plug in. He hadn't been through the motion before on the Division I college level. I think the thing that was amazing about Lou, and you're absolutely right, it was all about Lou, and it was all from day one. he had a program and a platform and a process that he knew he was going to plug in, and he knew what it took because he had done it before. You know, he had the experience of turning a program around, and he realized the number one thing was the mindset. And you remember the first meeting we ever had when he kicked Chuck Lanza's feet off the stage, and he said, "When I'm talking, you sit up in your chair and you look me straight in the eye. It's my way or the highway. I'm not a patient man." He went through his whole spiel.
Right.
What are our priorities?
Chuck was a captain.
Chuck was a captain. Went through our priorities. He gave us a playbook for life. What were the trust, love, and commitment? You know, first we'll be best, then we'll be first. I mean, it was a total change of everything that we had learned or hadn't learned, right? And we had to learn and buy into that process. And you remember the first year we lost.
Oh yeah, it was, man, the first couple of years
by like
right.
30 points or something crazy like that. We were there, we just didn't know how to win. And then the second year, we made it a little further. We won a couple of those games. Then we got blown out by A&M in the Cotton Bowl. And I'll never forget, you know, that was like the low point that I had almost in my career. And then I remember thinking, I'm never going to feel like this again. And then, of course, we all gel together and go 12-0 and run the gauntlet of the teams that you mentioned that finished, I think, 4 teams in the top 10 or something that we beat that year.
Notre
But
Dame
that was all about Lou. Think about Lou. Every single person there understood that he was in charge. The trainers,
right,
coach,
right,
players, kickers. Like there was no no tolerance for
right.
not adhering to his rules.
Right. And you know, and he was so exceptional in so many ways as far as his leadership. And he, you know what, he was like that, and he didn't give a shit who cared. I mean, you either bought into his program, and what I'm getting at, or you know, again, like I said, you're left behind. And really what that showed, I mean, football is a tough game played by tough people. And that's not the only element, but that's a big part of it. And Lou was, when I say tough, I'm talking about not just physically, but emotionally as well. And you talk about his conviction and his attitude and his plan. I mean, everything for him was to have a plan, show up, execute, have a plan. You're at about 90, 95% success, he would always say. And, you know, and it's not to say that it was all about Lou. He knew the culture. Hell, he knew the culture better than anybody at Notre Dame. But the culture, you had to separate the culture. And what I hear so much about Notre Dame now, and I love Notre Dame. We both do. We went to school there, and what they stand for. That means more to me now than it did when I was playing. But, you know, Lou had a tough job to do, and that's to win football games. When you go into an opposing stadium, they don't care about your culture. They don't care about what you're doing off the field. Yeah, right, exactly. So we had to have that mindset and be tough, throughout the season. But so, and I think that's what, getting back to Marcus, I think that's what Marcus Freeman needs to get, is that layer, a little bit of more nastiness, start swimming in the Lou Holtz pond rather than the Jim Tressel pond, both as far as his nastiness, and also his play calling and his, how do I want to say, risk taking. Tressel's MO was, and like a lot of coaches, Paterno, going all the way back to Paul Brown would say, football is a game of mistakes. Those who make the fewest mistakes win. And I saw that, I think, in I want to say his first year, I want to say at Ohio, first full year at Ohio State.
Yeah, you got to win and not coach to not lose.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. He doesn't have the team yet. That down there at Ohio State, he didn't have the team to go toe to toe with Ohio State and not make, and carry that philosophy going forward into the game. And he lost that game. Notre Dame lost that game in the second half. They had Ohio State on their heels, but their inability to make plays and call the right play, to me, cost them the game. But anyways, that's I think a quick take on Marcus Freeman. We'll certainly get into him more. You're under the Notre Dame Nation. You're under the Golden Dome with Wes Pritchett, Frank Stamps, two former linebackers from the 1988 national championship team, undefeated national championship team that during that season won 10 of 12 games by double digits or more. And that doesn't just say something about our offense led by Tony Rice, but also our defense by keeping the score down low. That schedule in 1988 was Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, Stanford. We were at Pitt, I remember. We were home to Miami, then Air Force, Navy, Rice, and then home to Penn State, and then we finished out at Southern Cal. Looking at Notre Dame's 2024 season, I know it's different today, and things are a little bit softer. But what do you think? Their first 6 games are A&M, Northern Illinois, Purdue, Miami of Ohio, Louisville, and Stanford. It does really set up pretty well for the playoff at the end of the year.
Tough game for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's going to be 105,000, whatever it seats, 107,000 screaming fans. First year, Mike Elko is the head coach. I think the guys, he spent a year at Notre Dame. He was a fantastic defensive coach, did a great job at Duke. The quarterback, Riley Leonard, played at Duke, so he's going to know that, know at least what his strengths and weaknesses are. But I think Notre Dame's bringing a talented team into that stadium. I think the A&M game will tell us a lot. If they win that game, they're easily going to win the next 3 games. And then Louisville, I don't know what Louisville's got this year, but, obviously they beat us last year, caught us at the right time. But Notre Dame could easily be 6 or 7 in a row, when they face Florida State. I mean, they've got 3 tough games. They've got A&M, they've got Florida State, and they have Southern Cal, and I don't know what Louisville's got, so maybe 4 games. But it's typical versus schedules that we've had in the past. It's definitely one that is on the easier side. In fact, I saw a statistic today that they were ranking all the probability of going undefeated this year. Notre Dame actually had the highest percentage ranking on the list.
That's certainly the kiss of death. Now, I understand. What are we now? Almost 40 years removed, 35 at least from when we played. But I'll tell you, not everything that happened 50 years ago, it was bad. I understand, again, things are different now, but there's a lot of things that are still the same. And, for them to get to 6, 7, 8-0 going into Florida State, they've got to play. And this is what I, loved about Lou is his consistent nature. He was consistently a lot of things, and some things don't really want to share on the podcast. But man, I'll tell you what, if anything, he kept your edge about it. And you never were comfortable with where you were as a player, as a football team. And that goes for himself. And that was the thing. He held himself to a standard equally, if not higher, than he did his players and coaches.
Back here. So it wouldn't matter. You think you played great on Saturday. He would come in Sunday, tell you that you didn't play great, break down all your mistakes, and then create at least in my mind, the thought that we were playing the best football team that had ever existed.
Absolutely. And that's exactly
better. It was going to be a tough week. I mean, I can remember going into the Rice game.
Right.
And really seriously thinking that they were going to be one of the most explosive offenses we had.
And I don't think Rice had won a game in like 40 games.
We beat them 52-7 or something. But I mean, that was the mentality that was how much he owned and I believed him because everything he had told me once I started believing in it worked.
Right.
Remember when he told us to go to all stand up and tell something about yourself, and then he would encourage us to go do stuff together. And because remember, we were very disjointed when Jerry left. And I remember Lou always was trying to encourage us to come together as a team and come together as friends. And I think it had a crazy positive impact. But most importantly, like you said, Frank, he had everything. He had dotted all his I's and crossed all his T's. He had every single thing that he did during the course of the day and during practice was rehearsed, and he knew exactly what he was doing. Remember the first day he was there, we had quote unquote walkthrough workouts, and all of us threw up.
Yeah.
6:30 a.m.
All a couple of guys quit. I remember that.
Put exactly on the line. You couldn't be an inch off. Like all the attention to detail started that first day.
Yeah, attention to detail. That was another element of Paul Brown, attention to detail. And Holtz is from that era, growing up with Paul Brown. And I go back to Paul Brown. I consider him one of the greatest coaches ever. But you're right. Accountability that Holtz had for himself and for everybody else. And, it just wasn't all that nice. And that's what I want to see Marcus Freeman adapt and I mentioned that earlier about the leadership, but yeah, going into this season, they're going to have to maintain, looking at the schedule, maintain that edge, going into every game thinking that if they don't play their best, they're going to lose. Because you know the mentality of the other teams. What's the other teams when they play Notre Dame?
It's their bowl game. It's going to be their biggest game. They're going to bring it. The thing was, Frank, and you know this, at least by the time we got to 1988, there was never a snap, a game, or a defensive. Never was I in the huddle. Never did I think that we were not better than the team we played and that I wasn't going to win my rep, or that we weren't going to be more physical than the other team.
Well, I was a little different. I was scared to death. I was scared. Holtz had me scared to death of everybody. But I played good scared. I played good scared because it was just that added adrenaline that I could
I don't know bring this up, but we'll talk about it in another podcast. But I feel like sometimes you said Marcus is a little aloof. I feel like Notre Dame feels like they're just like gonna win because they're Notre Dame and they're pretty bigger.
Exactly. Right. We'll just throw our jerseys out there. And that's what a soft, especially at Notre Dame, because Notre Dame's a wonderful school with a great network. And when you're finished at Notre Dame, if you use that Notre Dame degree, it's you got a head start on a lot of people, and it can be comfortable. And I think sometimes coaches that aren't demanding of their players, a little nasty, they get a little comfortable, and I hate to use this word soft. And I'm not saying Notre Dame is soft, but he's got to avoid that comfortable area where they just think that, like you're saying, hey, we'll just throw our jerseys out there and we'll win because we're Notre Dame or we have better.
Well, look, if you ask Lou what his biggest regret, or I've heard him say his biggest regret while he was at Notre Dame, is that he actually felt like he got comfortable where Notre Dame was at the very end of his career there, that he wasn't continually striving to get better and and to recruit better and to continue to push the players and not be complacent, right? And that's his greatest phrase that I take with me, and I've told my kids since they were could understand what I was saying. But you're either growing or you're dying, right? In other words, you
either get better every day. You never stay the same. You either get better or worse.
That's right.
So, that's the schedule. I think that's looking at it. And I know, we're comparing it to the 88 team, but there are a lot of, the game isn't that complicated. People will tell you that it's different now. It's more complicated. I think that's a bunch of bullshit. Kids are basically the same. And the way you play the game is basically the same. It seems like they've turned it over to like I listen to some of these guys, they're the smartest guys in the room. Well, football's not a game of high intellect. And if you want to start thinking that it is, then teams like I hate to say this, Alabama, A&M, Miami or Florida are going to come in and kick your ass. Georgia. You can say that because you're from Georgia. All right. Well, so that's the schedule. And the last thing, here we got about 6 or 7 minutes left. Riley Leonard. It's their third transfer portal quarterback in the last 4 years. What does that say to you?
Well, unfortunately, I think it's the nature of the beast. I mean, if you look at college football right now, what percentage of the Division I Power Five quarterbacks are transfer quarterbacks? It's a high percentage. It's not just Notre Dame. I think that's a scary thing if you're a quarterback or a young kid that thinks he's going to put in 2 or 3 years, and then of course he's got to compete against a fifth-year senior when he thinks he's going to be starting. But let me just say something about Riley Leonard. I mean, I remember when we were playing Duke last year, they did a really expansive piece on him and just what a quality person he was, what a great athlete he was, and the relationship he had with his mother. He's very religious. And I was actually very impressed with the kid. And in fact, if he doesn't get hurt, we probably lose that game. I don't know if you remember how tough,
Yeah, I know. I remember that. Yeah.
First, 4th and 15, 4th and 16, or we don't win. Anyway, all the things I've read say that the kid he's come in, he's leading, they voted him as captain. He's an incredible athlete. He understands the offense. We'll see. We'll see. I'm hopeful.
Well, and you brought up the captain, one of our teammates from back in the day, Robert Banks, we're on that text thread with about 20 other guys. And Robert Banks brought up a good point. He said, what do you think about a fifth-year quarterback coming in being named captain? I mean, it's a legitimate question. I mean,
Yeah.
how much has he earned that?
I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
Well, I'm not saying he should or shouldn't be. I'm just saying the question's out there. How much is he, how much of the blood, sweat, and tears and the leadership do you know of a guy that, you've known for what, maybe, I don't know, what's it been? How long has he been on campus? Less than a year, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think Sam Hartman was captain as well last year.
Yeah. So I mean, so I'm not and I think Notre Dame has said this, and I applaud them for this. I think you got to start, especially at the quarterback position. I'm not wishing Riley Leonard any bad. I'm wishing Notre Dame all the success in the world. I hope they win every game but one. Because excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. Because that's the only way we're relevant anymore, because we're 12-0, we're the last national championship team. But I feel like a bit like the Miami Dolphins, the undefeated Miami Dolphins of 72. But again, I love Notre Dame, but you got to grow. I think you got to grow that position organically for a couple of reasons. Is one, it's going to take a while. I heard one coach, a successful coach, talk about how much it usually takes a quarterback a couple of years to know your system. Now here this guy comes in, with a year, less than a year, and all of a sudden he's going to play at the highest level with Notre Dame. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying presents a lot of challenges that a quarterback that's in the system for 3 or 4 years won't have. And the other thing is what kind of message does that send to the high school kids looking at schools saying, well, hell, I'll go to Notre Dame, I'll spend 2 or 3 years there, wait patiently for my turn to be the starter, and then they bring in a transfer portal.
Hey, my middle son was a very good quarterback, and after watching the transfer portals and all that, he moved to tight end. He didn't even look back. He's like, Dad, I don't want to play quarterback. It's not worth it.
And what do you mean not worth it?
Well, it's because it's so political, and think about how many quarterbacks are being turned over every year,
right?
At every school.
Exactly.
You got guys starting 2 or 3 years now at a college at quarterback. because of the transfer portal. It's so hard. It's one guy and it's political and everybody talks about it. It's just that, well, now his skill set fit what he's doing better too. But I mean, at the time, it was part of the conversation. Let's just say when he was converting to tight end.
Yeah. Well, perfect example. There's real life right there that we were just talking about. So the positives I like on Leonard, and I appreciate you sending me that article, is one, keeping in line with that 88 championship team, especially the defense, and how much fun we had and how much irreverence we practiced was. What I like most about him is he grew up in the same town as Jimmy Buffett. Now, how do you not like a guy that grew
He's
up
from Alabama? I never met anybody from Alabama I didn't like, by the way.
I mean, sorry, growing up in the same town as Jimmy Buffett, you gotta love the guy. What is he? Oh, he has a sense of humor, from what I've been told. He talks a lot of crap. He would fit right in with that team in '88. And this one's really important. He can laugh at himself. Some of his teammates, Jaden Thomas, the wide receiver, was talking about he can laugh at himself, and that's real important right there.
Yeah, he said, listen, I think he's a kid. I mean, and that's what I remember them sort of highlighting in the Duke Notre Dame game last year, was how he and his mom have this banter that they go back and forth, and they're always having fun and laughing at themselves. And that's a great characteristic to have as a quarterback.
Oh, my God, yeah, you can't. You got to. I mean, you have a bad play. You have a bad play. It's ancient history. Joe Montana always reminded. When I watched him play, he always reminded me of a guy like that. How about his physical tools? He's 6'4". That's awesome.
Yeah,
love a big quarterback. Not only because they can see over the line, but shit, they're hard to sack.
He's fast too, Frank.
Yeah. Now, getting to that, one last positive. What I love is he knows he's going to make mistakes, and John Wooden always said, the famed UCLA basketball coach, he said, there are no mistakes in life, only lessons. And it sounds like he's come from that mold. And I'll tell you, when I realized playing football that I knew, when they told me, when I got in the NFL, they said, hey, listen, we know you're going to make mistakes. Just make them 1,000 miles an hour. He goes, we'll correct the mistakes. And the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders at that point. The negatives for him, is, we talked about it, is being a transfer. I don't know if he knows the system as well, or has been in the system, or practiced the system, or played against
offensive coordinator. So nobody's going to know the system. I mean, this is the OC's first year. So,
well, there you go. I mean, that's a challenge. The ankle surgery. I can speak from experience. I had ankle surgery, and it took me a good. I know the technology and the way they do surgeries now today is a lot better, but still, he was in a boot, 4 or 5 months ago or whatever. And, it's there. Was I the same player physically? No. But, I was able to do my job. So, we'll see that. Whether that manifests itself. You said he was really fast. I mean, let's see.
He's fast enough. He's very athletic. He was a heck of a basketball. I think he was all world of basketball, I believe, as well. In that article that I sent you, they talked about all the different sports that he's so good at.
Yeah, says that's not a sport that he doesn't pick up.
Look, Notre Dame was physically probably, bigger and stronger and faster than Duke, and he absolutely gave us fits. So,
well, we've got now, go ahead.
Always optimistic, but I think there's really no excuse for Notre Dame this year. I'll tell you that.
When you say no excuse for what?
For not being successful. I mean, they like I said,
well, what is success this year?
I think success would they got to make. There is no excuse for Notre Dame not to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, no, none, no excuse.
I don't care what, or that's 11-1, 10-2, whatever the record is, they've got to make the playoffs.
Yeah, they really do, or that will not look good for, the leadership there. Well, we've got about 20 seconds left in this. I want to thank Notre Dame Nation for joining us under the Golden Dome with Wes Pritchett and Frank Stamps, two former linebackers from the '88 championship team, breaking down and previewing the Notre Dame season and leadership coming up. Next week we'll preview. We'll talk a little personnel. We'll talk a little bit about the A&M game, and hopefully we can get Timmy Brown on board. So thank you, Wes.
Yep, you got it. Enjoyed it. Notre Dame Nation. See you next week.
Peace out. Under the Golden Dome.
Under the Golden Dome.